Welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney, or from Lucasfilm. Whichever way you slice it, legends. Today I'm here to talk about the last two books in the Lando Calrissian trilogy, that being Lando Calrissian and the Flamewind of Oseon, and the Starcave of Thonboka. Again, all dressed up with my glasses and my nice shirt. I love these books, man. Like, I don't want to spoil them because they're actually pretty short novels. They're all about like 100 something pages. They're not super long. Um, but the second book, our boy Lando, I mean, he's gambling and stuff again, and he loses all of his money, or a good portion of it. He gets caught up in another situation that he doesn't want to really be in, like in the first book. And so he goes on an adventure with Wuffy Ra again. And of course, Roker Gepta comes back from the first book. He's really the only tying thread here, him and Wuffy Ra being the continuing threads. And we're getting little sparkles of information on Wuffy Ra, adding to the mystery of what is Wuffy Ra. And we have Roker Gepta back because he was defeated in the first book, and so he has a personal vendetta against Lando Calrissian. In fact, one of my favorite scenes from the entire book is actually when Roker Gepta starts to torture Lando, and the way he does it is he also has to suffer himself, which I just thought was really sadistic. Like, you're willing to physically, and mentally feel pain yourself in order to inflict pain upon someone else because you hate them that much. And even in that, we get a little snippets of Lando's backstory. Like, we don't know much about Lando's past, but we learn a little bit through that scene, and I thought that was really interesting. And Roker Gepta he's not like the greatest villain of all time, but he is perfectly acceptable for what he is. He's a lot of fun. But I really enjoyed that scene most of all, not because I enjoy watching people get, hurt, especially Lando, but, I thought it was a really good scene in the book. One thing I'll say is that the Neil Smith trilogy is very, very weird. If you, if you do not, there's a lot of Earth words. I should say, like, real life words used. I guess I don't know how to explain it, but it's just also very weird because it's the '80s. But there's a lot of kooky, funny things in Star Wars, so I'm willing to deal with that. I mean, the next thing we'll be talking about is the Droids cartoon from the '80s, so that'll be another weird yet fun adventure, I'm sure. Um, but yeah, I mean, overall, I really enjoyed this second book, and this trilogy as a whole, I think, is absolute gold. Um, Now, I can understand why some people, especially people that I'm not trying to sound rude, but I can understand how people that don't really consume old media that much and are only used to new media. Like, I've watched a lot of like old movies from the 50s, from the 60s, I've seen those black and white films. I've seen films from the 70s, 80s. I've seen films from different eras of time. And so I understand how things used to be and stuff and whatnot. And, you know, I'm more accepting of maybe kookier stories because of that, because the 80s was kind of full of them. But I can understand why someone who's like only consumes new media would be like, I like the future of the EU, but not this '80s stuff where everything's kind of weird and stuff. But I personally, I'm a really big fan of it. I love that the Star Wars Expanded Universe is a universe where you can have really serious subject matter, like the Yusong Vong and torture and the embrace of pain. On the other hand, you can have Wuffy Ra and Lando going on these kooky, wacky adventures. Um, but yeah, really enjoyed the second book. Definitely think it's worth your time. Moving on to the third book, The Starcave of Thonboka. These are without spoilers, by the way, and I didn't take notes because I've already read these books before. But this one, we get the most information about Wuffy Ra. We learn that he is a machine based on this ancient race, which, to tie it in real quick to, I think it's in the Essential Guide to Droids, they actually tie this '80s series into the Yusong Vong War by addressing it as like there was two robot factions that were having an all-out war that affected the Vong back, thousands of years ago or whatever. And so the Vong had to fight off both of them, and they ended up having to run away from their galaxy. And one of those races was what Vufi Ra is. The ones they're called. There's a Silentium and the Abenor or something. But that was a really cool connection in the EU, though that's not stated in the book, of course, in the 80s, because the Yusong Vong did not exist. Hell, at that point in time, the Thrawn trilogy didn't come out, so we'd even have the Elysium Mari with the whole being outside the Force thing. Like we just had this Brian Daley's trilogy, Splinter of the Mind's Eye, and like the Marvel comics, and that was like it. But in this book, sorry, I wanted to talk about the cool EU connection. Of course, Roker Gepter returns again. He must have revenge. And we got these pirates, these mercenaries, and we got the race of Vufi Ra's people that are trying to. Man, how do I explain it? Like, Lando meets them. They got like all these weird sort of like stuff that they're able to do. They're able to like jump through hyperspace, but they're like actual things, but they're also like robots. It's a weird sort of thing. But that being said, again, the core of this trilogy is fun. And by the end of the book, even, and I think Matt Wilkins talked about this too, but Lando has an all-out duel with Roker Gepta on like the hull of the ship, like outside the ship, like they have a fight in space, like they duke it out, and that was like it's just so much fun. Like that's awesome. Um, Another thing this trilogy does really well is just make me really love Sabacc. Like when they talk about Sabacc in this book, I'm like, man, I want to play Sabacc with somebody now. And yeah, it just this, if you didn't love Lando from the movies, I don't know how these books couldn't win you over. Lando is just so much fun in this trilogy, and him and Vufi Ra. Oh my goodness, I like. I think I mean I might have said this before, but Vufi Ra has to be top 5 droids of all time in the Star Wars universe. I mean, my goodness, the fact that they have their whole sparring matches, and Lando's like, "Don't call me master," and every single time he will repeatedly call him master, despite the fact that Lando doesn't want to be called it. I really love their relationship, and it's really sad that we didn't get more of it. Of course, episode 5 there was no Vufi Ra, so you can't have him there. But I don't know. I wish Vufi Ra would just come back and join back up with Lando during the New Jedi Order or something, or during Legacy of the Force or anything. I would have loved to see more of him. And I know he shows up a few more times in the expanded universe. I know this isn't the last time we see him, but I love Vufi Ra. I think Vufi Ra is probably the greatest addition that this entire trilogy has given us, and it sucks that this is all I get. I want more. I really fell in love all over again with Vufi Ra. Like I remember Vufi Ra being a good character, but rereading it, I love Vufi Ra so much. Vufi Ra is such a good droid character. Um, but yeah, I think this series is absolutely worth your time because Lando Calrissian is just one of the coolest characters in fiction. And what I love about Lando too is that he is smart, he is intelligent, he's cunning, but he also just gets out of situations by like the skin of his teeth, but just pure luck, which is a lot of characters in Star Wars. But it's something about him and the way he goes about it. Like I think it's even in the first book, Mind Up of Sharu, which I forgot to mention. When he gets captured by like the police and stuff, the way Lando, like the way it's written, Lando's clearly scared, but he's not going to show it. And he always acts, like suave and debonair, like nothing can phase him. Stuff does. He's a normal dude, basically. And yet, he always pulls through, and he always, like, I guess that is a lot of courage. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, that's stupidity. He has fear, he just, goes through it. And as much as he'd like to say that he's, this good for nothing, smuggler, or not smuggler, this good for nothing gambler, who just wants the money, it's not. It even says how money can be a means to the end for some people, but it's not for Lando. And, as much as he says he doesn't want to help people, he always ends up doing it. And I think Lando is that's another thing too. I absolutely love that we got this trilogy with Lando, and I wish we got more with Lando. There's not enough Lando in the world. There's not enough love for Lando Calrissian, who is absolutely a fantastic character, and we love to see him in everything he's in. I mean, again, I can understand why some people might not enjoy this. You might get mixed reviews when you look up this series. Um, but if you're more okay with the kooky side of Star Wars, if you don't mind, if you grew up in the '80s or have watched a lot of like '80s stuff, like I don't know, for example, let's use I don't know, the Goonies. It's kind of a silly premise, right? These kids find this pirate map and they go find this ancient thing, right? It's kind of cheesy. I mean, these are children going on this wacky, crazy adventure. In several instances where they should probably die, but they don't. There's traps and there's dead bodies, and the kids aren't traumatized by this. They just move on. Silly premise, but a lot of fun. Or Back to the Future. Um, but it's fun. So I guess if I can compare the Lando trilogy to anything, it would be like those '80s movies, where there are a lot of silly elements, but it's also a lot of fun. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I absolutely love Lando Calrissian. I hope you check out this trilogy. I do think it's worth your time, abso-freaking-lutely. And as always, I will see you in the next video where we talk about the Droids animated TV show from the '80s and the tie-in comics. Until then, guys, may the Force be with you, and remember, Sabak.